What's up, fellow bike nerds? Welcome back to the Weekly Rewind, where we catch you up on all the hottest cycling news from the previous week. And boy, is there a lot of talk about this time around. We have 3 new drivetrains, 2 new e-bike motors, prototype spy shots, and more. But of course, we have to start with what's been causing the most buzz over the last few days, and that is Shimano's long-awaited entrance into the world of wireless shifting. Now, to be fair, Shimano updated just about everything in their flagship XTR line, including pedals, wheels, and brakes, but the biggest news is, of course, the drivetrain. So that's what we'll be focusing on here. This all-new XTR group set is the line's first complete overhaul since 2018. For context, we've seen SRAM drop 2 new drivetrains in that same period. That's given me a whole 7 years to dream about what a potential next-gen Shimano drivetrain could look like. And dream I did. A wider gear range, maybe even a 13th gear, and an electronic smart clutch are all things that crossed my mind. And we got none of those. And if I'm not gonna lie, it's left me feeling a bit underwhelmed. I'm not gonna go too far into the details on this video, but I will highlight some of what I consider to be the more interesting points. And since I've already started off being a bit of a negative Nancy, might as well begin with the stuff that you're not going to find here. For starters, the gear range remains the same at 500%, still less than SRAM. It also still relies on a derailleur hanger, which Shimano points out, and I think I have to agree might be more of a feature than a flaw, but regardless, it's still surprising to see that it's not a direct mount option. Last but not least, they've done away with Shimano's Shadow Plus clutch and instead replaced it with a pair of springs they're calling Shadow ES. This was done to reduce the size of the derailleur and minimize impacts, but from what I've gleaned from those who have ridden it, doesn't prevent excessive chain movement nearly as well as Shimano's now defunct one-way friction clutch. So other than just removing a wire, what exactly has Shimano done to the new XTR drivetrain? Well, in my opinion, one of the more impressive things is the new shifter, which has a ton of ergonomic adjustments and has been designed to feel as close to the current XTR mechanical shifter as possible. The most interesting thing for me though, probably the thing that I would be quickest to go out and buy, is the new 9 to 45 tooth cassette and accompanying short cage derailleur. This keeps the same 500% gear range, but reduces drivetrain weight by around 70 grams and increases ground clearance, both from the short cage derailleur in the back and the smaller chainring you'll be running up front. There are of course loads of other nitpicky details that have marginally reduced weight and improved performance, but again, we're going to stick with the broad strokes for now. The real question for me comes down to whether or not Shimano has surpassed SRAM with the new XTR Di2. It is marginally lighter and significantly cheaper than SRAM's top-tier XX transmission, and also shifts up and down the cassette significantly better. But SRAM has a wider gear range, much smoother and more reliable shifting, and of course a proper clutch. In the end, if I'm being fair and objective, I think there's reasonable argument to choose either one. But I can't help but shake the feeling that Shimano could have really blown us out of the water with the new XTR group set, but instead, we got more of a gentle ripple than a tidal wave. But believe it or not, that's not the only Shimano drivetrain that launched last week. Might have gotten less media attention, but in my opinion, the self-charging Q-Auto is just as impressive. At the heart of the system is a new rear hub that houses a tiny generator inside of it, which converts the rotational movement of the wheel into electrical energy. That means no more charging. But also housed inside that hub is Shimano's latest iteration of their auto shift function. That, according to Shimano, uses machine learning to suss out real-time data like cadence, speed, and gradient to select the best gear. But if AI shifting isn't up your alley, Shimano's also released a second new wireless shifter to pair with it. Now, it should go without saying that Q-Auto is designed for urban and commuter bikes, and the hub's weight, and what I assume are probably some pretty delicate internals, will likely limit its application elsewhere. But regardless, it's a pretty interesting concept, and it'll be cool to see how or if Shimano takes it any further in the future. Not to be outdone, we also saw Campagnolo release their Super Records 13 group set that we've been catching glimpses of for quite a while now. The biggest news here is that it pairs a 2x chainring setup with a 13-speed cassette in the rear. But instead of going for maximum gear range, Campagnolo is actually looking for the smallest amount of change in gear ratio between each gear. Another big change is the return of Campagnolo's beloved thumb lever, though it's now slimmer than ever. They've also added a third button inside of the hood, which can be programmed to control shifting or your choice of wireless accessory. The front and rear derailleur have both been slimmed down as well. Even with the added gear and improved lever functionality, the new Super Record 13 claims to be 80 grams lighter than its 12-speed predecessor, coming at 2,435 grams for the full group set. That makes it the lightest 2x group set on the market. coming in 60 grams lighter than SRAM's Red Access Grupo. And as rad as all that sounds, Campagnolo is hinting that that's just the start of what's to come. In their press release, they said that, quote, the Super Record 13 paves the way for the new platform to be completed with other configurations starting in September 2025. We'll be keeping a close eye out for whatever that is, and as soon as we find out about it, we'll let you know right here on the Weekly Rewind. So you might as well hit that subscribe button. Moving now from group sets to motors, because we saw not one, but two new e-bike systems launch last week. The first of these is TQ's new HPR 60, and as the name would imply, it now has 60 Newton meters of torque, 10 more than its predecessor, and bumps the peak power output by a whopping 100 watts, now at 350. Despite the pretty significant jump in power, the motor's size and weight remains relatively unchanged. It comes in at 4 pounds or 1,850 grams, only marginally more than the previous version. In addition to updating the motor, TQ has also launched 3 new higher energy density batteries. Product managers will be able to build a bike with either a 290, 360, or 580 watt-hour battery. Last but not least, TQ has also updated the top tube display. The latest version features a larger full-color screen and the ability to display several data streams at once. Unsurprisingly, we're already starting to see some bikes spec'd with this new HPR 60 motor. We'll be talking about one of those in just a little bit, but right now, it's time to move on to drive unit number 2, the Mahle M40. Mahle has been making e-drive systems for a while now, but this is their first self-branded mid-drive motor targeted specifically for E-MTBs. And by the looks of it, they're checking a lot of the right boxes. For starters, the motor delivers an impressive 105 Newton meters of torque and 850 watts of peak power, all in a package that weighs just 5.5 pounds or 2.5 kilograms. For reference, that's right in line with DJI's class-leading Avinox drive unit. They've also released 2 new batteries, a 534 watt-hour and an 800 watt-hour, designed exclusively for the M40 system. These are both impressively light, with the 800 watt-hour option weighing just 3,700 grams, 700 grams lighter than Bosch's 750 watt-hour battery. But of course, none of this will matter if it doesn't perform well on the trail. And based on what I've been able to find from people who have been able to do some first rides on the new system, it looks pretty promising. Pinkbike praised the motor's smooth and predictable power delivery and quiet noise. Partner brands are relatively slim right now, but we expect that will change if the M40 manages to deliver on all its promises. Remember a moment ago when I said we're already starting to see some bikes with the new TQ HPR 60 motor? Well, one of those is the Yeti MTE, Yeti's first lightweight E-MTB. The bike features 145 millimeters of travel delivered by Yeti's signature 6-finity suspension out back with a 106 millimeter fork in the front. One of the more interesting details on the frame is that it's the first time that Yeti has used Vectran, which is a high-strength, high-abrasion-resistant fiber inside one of their carbon frames. This is something that they've been using on Team Rider's downhill bikes for a while now, but it's cool to see this technology trickle down to something that you or I can actually buy. Obviously, we already talked quite a bit about the drive unit that's on the MTE, but as a reminder, the HPR 60 has 60 Newton meters of torque and 350 watts of peak power. In terms of battery size, most bikes are going to come with that larger 580 watt-hour battery, but the top tier build comes with the 290. That helps keep weight down as low as 38 pounds or 17.2 kilograms. But surprise, surprise, it isn't cheap. The base model listing for $9,850. Speaking of expensive bikes, our next product highlight is a limited edition Team Replica Cannondale Scalpel that lists for a whopping $14,699. But thankfully, you get a lot more than a fancy paint job for the price. The bike is spec'd to the nines with Shimano's new XTR Di2 group set, FSA KFX Team Edition carbon wheels, a Fox Factory shock and dropper post, and of course a Cannondale Lefty Ocho up front. The frame is also the Lab 71 version, which uses a high mod carbon layup that Cannondale claims makes it lighter, stiffer, and more responsive. So while this bike may be left for the Cannondale superfans, it's still cool to see what happens when a company throws all their resources into a production bike, and it'd be pretty neat to be able to have a bike that's essentially a replica of what the pros are doing. You can't do that with too many other sports. Let's go ahead and bring things down to earth just a little bit with the all-new Devinci Troy Carbon, which is essentially a carbon version of the alloy 5th gen Troy that was released last fall. It has increased travel numbers, more aggressive geometry, and a new, cleaner look, swapping the kink top tube for a straight one. The 150-160 travel bike has all the bells and whistles you'd expect from a modern all-mountain machine, including in-frame storage, a geometry-adjusting flip chip, and full 29 or mixed wheel size compatibility across all frame sizes. Many folks will also be happy to hear that Devinci has gone away with the Super Boost hub spacing and instead uses a standard 148mm rear axle. The bike has a 64-degree head tube angle across all sizes, but deviates just about everywhere else, ensuring all riders will have as close to the same fit as possible. For reference, the size large gets a 480mm reach, 440mm chainstays, and a 76.4-degree seat tube angle in the low setting. You can get a new Troy Carbon in one of two builds starting at $5,399. Time now for the deal of the week, where I perused the 99 Spokes deal page and handpicked my personal favorite from the dozens of deep discounts we've collected there. This time around, it's the Norco Fluid FSC3, which usually lists for $4,099, but at 37% off at Jensen USA is now just $2,599. For that, you get a carbon front triangle that helps keep the weight down at a very respectable 33.5 pounds or 15.2 kilograms, as well as a handful of pretty decent parts for the price. Some of those are the RockShox Pike Select fork, delivering 140mm of travel, a Super Deluxe Select Plus shock on the back with 130mm of travel, a 12-speed SRAM NX drivetrain, SRAM DB8 brakes, and a WTB ST wheel set. This, combined with the middle-of-the-road trail bike geometry, should make it a great choice for anyone looking for something that can handle a bit of everything, from long cross-country rides to laps to the dirt jumps. As of right now, Jensen only has the bike available in a medium and a large. So if that fits you and you're on the market for a new do-it-all trail bike at a pretty good cost, then you might as well get on it quick. I've got a link to check it out for yourself down in the description. Moving on now to industry gossip. This time around, I've got two new product prototypes to tell you about. The first is a full suspension Trek gravel bike that was first seen under Justinas Levejka as he won this year's Trans-Balkans race. Unlike a lot of full suspension gravel bikes we've seen as of late that use like an elastomer or something like that to control the rear wheel, the Trek uses a proper linkage-driven RockShox Sid Luck air shock mounted high in the front triangle. The shock has a super short stroke length, likely delivering somewhere around 50mm of travel, which suggests that this might be an all-new gravel-specific variant of RockShox XC shock as well. What's perhaps most interesting though is how close this bike looks to being mass market ready. It has cleanly integrated frame protection, a very production-ready looking paint job, and no one-off 3D printed or CNC'd bits in sight. If I had to guess, I'd say that we'll be seeing this thing come out by the end of the year. And of course, as we learn more, we'll let you know here on the Weekly Rewind. Prototype number 2 comes from a couple spy shots taken by Pink Bike's media team at this past weekend's Liugang World Cup. Hanging off of a specialized stunt jumper in the SRAM booth is what appears to be an all-new, or at least moderately redesigned T-type derailleur, cassette, and crankset. The new derailleur has even more machining than the current XX version, and the prototype cassette follows suit, with fewer supporting legs on the larger cogs. The crankset takes a completely new take on SRAM's current Cork off-road power meter with a design architecture more similar to what we've seen on the roadside. SRAM hasn't made any comments here, and it's worth noting that this was not found on a race bike, so we have no idea where in the production cycle this is at, but it's still interesting to take a look at nonetheless. Last but not least, it's time to wrap things up by sharing a little something that got us stoked that I hope will do the same for you. This time, I've got an edit from Dan Paley ripping his custom 26-inch Giant Trans X. This one was particularly nostalgic for me. The music choice, editing style, and of course, the small wheels brought me back to my high school days when mountain bikes first caught the attention of this little BMX kid. It's just 2 minutes long, and in my opinion, definitely worth the watch. I've left a link to check it out for yourself in the description. That's a wrap for this week's episode of the Weekly Rewind. Thanks as always for tuning in, and if you haven't done so yet, I would appreciate it if you take just a second to like this video and subscribe to the 99 Spokes YouTube channel. We'll have the same thing dropping next Monday, so make sure you tune in then. And until then, remember that bikes are for everyone. Have fun out there.